Chess friends, I hope you are doing well. Today, I have a very wonderful and precious chess game that I played with the Oblivion chess engine in the Computer Chess Championship, Bullet Games. It is currently holding the 4th position, and it even defeats Komodo Dragon, which is just marvelous. It comes with a new version, and I will show you the chess tactics and strategies that we employed in the game. This game is just marvelous, so, let's start the game without wasting any time. I started the game with d4, we have knight f6 and c4 on the board to control the center, right. Here, black has a few options to consider, whether to play the modern variation or the Bogo-Indian. We have e6 because black is interested in playing the Bogo-Indian defense, which is just a prophylactic opening. After knight f3, bishop before check happened in the game. I had the chance to block it with my knight or play bishop to d2, but instead, I played a very shocking move, knight to d2. I blocked it with my knight because I didn't want to exchange the dark squared bishops. We have b6 on the board because black wants to consider bishop b7 to gain access to this territory, where d5 can be possible in the game. Of course, c5 cannot be possible for black because their bishop is busy fighting with the knight. We have e3 and bishop b7, gaining access to this diagonal where knight to e4 can be possible with the idea of playing d5. We have bishop to d3 on the board, protecting the e4 square. I am also threatening to push my pawns forward and attack black. That is my plan. After both sides played short side castles, we have knight to c6 on the board, gaining control over the center. Here, you can see how Oblivion is getting access to the center. Finally, we have e4 on the board because I want to dominate the center. I am the god of chess, and I do what I like to do. The Oblivion chess engine was just born to clean my toilet room because my toilet smells too much, and Oblivion has only that job. Here, many players might think of considering d6 to gain control over the center. But I will play a very impressive move, knight back to b1, moving the knight back to my home square. That is the difference between you and me. If you move your knight back to your home square, your teacher might yell at you, calling it a mistake, but if I move my knight back, it will be the best move because your dark squared bishop will be trapped there. That is the difference between the shoes and the helmet. We have d5, I mean, black would play d5. After some center exchanges, I will consider e5 on the board, and you can see how my pawns are advancing. Black has to play knight to e4, protected by the light squared bishop. Then, I will consider a3, followed by knight to c3, putting pressure on the knight. Therefore, black has to capture it. After exchanges, you can see how my pawns will be structured in such a way that the bishop has an open diagonal, the queen can become active. And the dark squared bishop along with the knight on g5 can create vulnerabilities on black's king side. It's like a storm, you go out to sea with your boat, but a sudden storm comes your way. I can also play rook e1 and e3 to gain access to the g and h files, but I have to be careful because black's bishop pair can attack my rook. Therefore, we have a5, a few moves later, I will consider knight to g5 to put pressure on the h7 pawn. This is the ordinary variation I am showing you because after the exchanges, I will play the strongest move. Can you guess what move I will consider? I know you cannot guess any moves that I can think of because I can think of almost 100 moves, I mean thousands of moves, in 1 second for each variation. My brain is sharp, like a shark's teeth that can chop black into thousands of pieces. I can play queen to h5, putting pressure on the h7 pawn. Even if black plays g6 it does not matter because queen h6 followed by bishop f6 can lead to checkmate. Therefore, black has to consider f5 to control the 7th rank. I will play en passant, opening the file, and this position will just be over for black. There is a possibility of sacrificing the bishop on the g6 square. After queen h4 and rook exchanges, this position will be just over for black. Even if you dare to offer a queen exchange, I will show you my middle finger and play one of my 1000 elaborated brilliant moves. Can you guess what move I will consider? If Mikhail Tal were here, he would play rook to e8, and black would be dead lost because they would have to capture the rook. Then, I would play another sacrificing move, bishop takes g6. You can see how I sacrifice my pieces like Mikhail Tal. giving up all my material to win the hearts of thousands of fans, because after the sacrifice, even if you dare to capture my queen, I will play f7 check. The king will be terrible, the king cannot stay on the 8th rank, therefore, after king g7 happens on the board, I will play bishop takes check. After the capture, I will promote to a new queen, and this position will be just winning for me, right? So, going back to the position, we discovered that playing any normal move, such as d6, would be a very bad choice, therefore, the bishop moves back to the e7 square, and we have finally d5 targeting these pieces. Now black plays a crunchy move, knight to b4. In this position, many players might think of capturing the pawn on the d5 square because if someone attacks you, why wouldn't you attack them? Therefore, you would like to capture the pawn on the d5 square, so, I will capture it, and after a few moves, you can see how my rook will go to the e1 square, gaining access to this semi-open file, where your knight on b4 will be very passive, your dark squared bishop is very passive, your light squared bishop has no future, the queen has no job, the rook has no cash, and with a hopeless game, black will be in terrible shape. My knights can maneuver themselves. The dark squared bishop will have very good opportunities, and your position will be just over. Going back to the position, we discovered that capturing the pawn on the d5 square is a very bad choice, therefore, the knight moves to the b4 square, putting pressure on the bishop. After the bishop goes back to the b1 square, you can see how I want to maneuver my knight to the f1 square through g3, gaining access to these files. Black has to be very careful here because my pieces will be very sharp and secure to attack you. My pieces are like whales, sharks, or cat in a fish that can chop black into thousands of pieces. Alright, so we have e takes d5 and c takes d5. I capture the pawn with this pawn because I need to open up the c file. You can see that I am using the third concept, e5, putting pressure on the knight. I also get an open light square diagonal for my light squared bishop. We have a5, rook e1, and in a few moves, you can see how my pieces are located on the first rank. This is another difference between you and me. When the middle game starts and 90% of your pieces stay on the first rank, your position will be very vulnerable, but if my pieces stay on the first rank, it would be a tremendous and advantageous position for me. Because I have the future of my knights. And my knights will study at Harvard University and will do million-dollar business on the 5th rank with the bishop on g5, where e5 can be possible with the idea of putting the queen on these light squares to attack, and invade you on the h7 pawn. That is my plan, right? Therefore, after the rook moves, the knight goes to the g3 square, and your position is very passive here, even if you dare to consider any normal kind of move, such as d6. This is a natural-looking move, but even any natural-looking move can defeat you instantly because you are playing against Stockfish. I have knight to d4, where knight to f5 can be possible to create some potential threats. After the bishop moves here, followed by bishop c2 and knight c5, I will play bishop to g5. Putting pressure on the knight, at this point, I can push forward my pawn to the f4 square, where e5 can arrive. Therefore, black needs to consider rook to e5, putting pressure on the bishop. My knight will then go to the f5 square, putting pressure on your king side. Therefore, you have to consider h6 because you have no other choice but to attack my bishop. After the exchanges happen, I will play knight to h5, putting pressure on the queen, and the position will be just over for you. You are playing against the spirit of Mikhail Tal, enhanced by Stockfish, who can crush you with a combination, just like a mixer machine makes juice from apples and bananas. After the queen goes to the g6 square, I can smash you down by playing f4. Now, you have to move back your rook because rook takes e4 is not possible. After rook e8, my knight will move back to the h4 square, and you can see that your queen has literally no squares to escape. The queen needs to hide her face under the arm of the king, and as long as the queen is exposed by the light squared bishop, I will play e5, putting pressure on the queen. Now, the queen needs to hide again because if you dare to consider g6, I can play knight to f6 check, forking your pieces, and your position will be just over. If the queen goes back to the h8 square, the position will be just over for you. Do you know what I can play now? e6, attacking your pawn on the f7 square, And there is a possibility of opening up my rook file, that is queen to g4, which can attack your pawn, pin it down, and allow me to play knight to f6, forking your pieces, right? Your position will be just over for you, therefore, black needs to consider very carefully, otherwise, he will lose and get checkmated very soon. Even in this position, which is already losing for black, I will play queen to g4, and in a few moves, the king will be exposed. I can play queen takes g6, followed by knight to f5. At this point, you can see how the bishop is under attack by my 3 pieces, and you can also see that my rook is gaining control over the diagonal. The king cannot escape through the border, the rook on d is well protecting the border. You have to play very carefully. After the exchanges, queen to f6 check, followed by knight takes h6, will arrive. You can see how the king will be trapped on the king side with literally no bodyguards he paid for. He will lose his queen and, with that loss, the king will be depressed and need to consult a psychologist, right? So, let me share an inspirational quote in sudden with you. An important reminder: every single thing you do today is something that your 90-year-old self would wish they could go back and do. The good old days are happening right now. Going back to the position, we discovered that playing any natural move, such as d6 in this position, would be a very bad choice, right? So, in this position, we have g6 on the board to stop my knight from reaching the f5 square, but I am Stockfish. I am the god of chess. You have the plan of maneuvering your bishop to the g7 square. It does not matter because after a4, I will play a very crunchy move. Can you guess what move I dare to play here? You stopped my knight from coming to the f5 square, right? Therefore, I will play knight to f5 anyway because I am Stockfish, the leader of every grandmaster. Every grandmaster analyzes their games using my UCI engine because I am smarter than everyone. Even Magnus Carlsen analyzes his own games using me on his computer. At this point, if black dares to capture the knight on f5, it will be just over. Thinking this, black might not desire to capture my knight because he knows he will fall into a trap. Black might instead think of considering another normal move, such as knight to c5 on the board, but that would again be a very bad choice. If he does not accept my sacrifice, I will play knight to h6 check, checking the king. If the king goes to h8, I can capture the pawn on the f7 square, forking your pieces. After the king goes to g7, I can play knight to g5, attacking your pawn. The queen will be trapped there. Again, you cannot capture my knight on the h6 square because there is a possibility of a double check. The king and queen will be forked by the knight. After d6 and a few moves, I will capture the pawn, move my knight back, and join my rook on the h3 square. You can see how my knights, along with the rook and queen, can arrive on h5 at any cost. Then, the paired soldiers will crisscross swords to attack the black king, and the position will be just dead lost for you, right? Going back to the position, we discovered that any normal move, such as knight to c5, would be a very bad choice because knight to h6 can ruin your position very badly. That is like acid rain falling on your territory. In this position, black has to capture my knight. He has no other choice. Then, I played e5 on the board, kicking out your knight. Many players here might think of capturing the pawn on the d5 square. That is a very common move, but it is a very bad move. I can now play queen to c2, attacking your pawn. You can see that your pawn cannot be protected by the queen, knight, or light squared bishop. The pawn is alone. After the bishop moves back, pawn capturing happens, threatening queen takes h7, bishop to g5 will arrive on the board, attacking your queen. After f6, I can capture the pawn, the king moves, and bishop to h6 will arrive, attacking your bishop. Therefore, black might play very differently, considering rook to e7, thinking it would be a good choice, but they don't know that I am the god of chess. Nobody can defeat me. If you are playing against me, you should immediately resign the game, otherwise, I will checkmate you very badly. Top chess engines do the same. If I get any match with them, They immediately resign because they know I can defeat them in just 25 moves. I will play queen to h8 check, the king has to move up, therefore, I will capture the bishop, and in a few moves, I will play knight to d4, and it will be checkmate on the spot, the king will be dead on the spot, taken down by the knight card. Going back to the position, we discovered that capturing the pawn on the d5 square is a very bad choice. That's the reason why black here played another amazing move, knight to b4, he sacrificed the knight on the f6 square anyway, but I am not interested in your knight, I am interested in your pawn, and played bishop to h6 on the board. You can see how my bishop pair is dominating the board. Queen to g4 can arrive, possibly capturing the knight. In a few moves, I played queen to d2 to protect my bishop. At this point, you can see how much I am threatening black's position. My arrows are sharp, the rook can go to the a3 square to dominate the g file, right? We have rook to e6 on the board. Black is trying to sacrifice his rook, but I am not interested in your hacking rook, your dumb rook, I am interested in your bishop and your king, and as you can see, I captured your rook and finally your knight on the board. At the end of the day, you have a knight for my rook and a rook for the bishop, and the remaining pieces are almost the same. Right? But your king is a little bit exposed. I have to attack your f7 pawn with my rook and knight in a joint attack. In a few moves, you can see how we are progressing on the board. At the end of the day, I have very few advantages, and your queen is just terribly lost in the game. At the end of the day, I am just pushing forward your pawns. I need to capture all your pawns, and I will win the game simply because, at the end of the day, it will be a rook versus a rook and a bishop. You can see how I am giving some sort of checks. At the end of the day, I even captured the queen and the bishop. At this point, you can see that even if you dare to capture my pawn, I will be left with 2 pawns to your 1 single pawn and will win the game. Slowly but surely, I promoted a pawn into a new queen and checkmated you very soon. I hope you enjoyed the game very much. If so, then don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. I wish your chess skills will be greatly enhanced. Bye bye, take care and see you soon. Subscribe for more.